Naledi was the kind of young woman everyone noticed when she walked into a room. She carried herself with confidence, always dressed in the latest fashion, her nails and hair perfectly done. Living in Johannesburg, she dreamed of a life filled with luxury, designer handbags, high-end cars, and glittering parties. To her, success was measured by appearances, and she believed that marrying into wealth would finally give her the glamorous life she craved. Her boyfriend, Thabo, was the opposite of everything she idolized. He was polite, humble, and soft spoken. He worked as what she believed to be an ordinary office employee, earning just enough to take care of himself. To Naledi, he was sweet, but far from the dream man she imagined for herself. Often, she found herself thinking she deserved more, someone richer, someone who could spoil her the way she believed she deserved. Naledi had a habit of looking down on others. Whenever she walked through the streets, she mocked the street vendors, calling them strugglers. At restaurants, she would make comments about waiters, saying things like, I could never live a life like that. To her, respect was reserved only for the wealthy, and she never missed a chance to remind people where she thought they stood. Still, Thabo continued to treat her kindly, never raising his voice, never arguing when she flaunted her arrogance. He simply watched her, his calm demeanor hiding emotions he chose not to reveal. Naledi mistook his silence for weakness, not knowing there was far more to him than she could ever imagine. One evening, just as the sun was setting and the Johannesburg skyline glowed with orange and gold, Thabo surprised Naledi by arriving with a sleek car waiting outside. She stepped out, her eyes widening as she noticed a driver opening the door for her. But it wasn't what she expected. The driver was an older man, dressed in worn-out clothes, his face lined with years of struggle. Thabo introduced him softly. Naledi, this is Mr. Komatso. And in that moment, without realizing it, Naledi's world had begun to change forever. Mr. Komatso stood patiently by the car door, his back slightly bent from years of hard work, his hands rough and weathered. The moment Naledi approached, he greeted her politely with a warm smile, saying, Good evening, Cece. His voice was gentle, respectful, filled with a quiet dignity. But instead of appreciating his courtesy, Naledi's eyes narrowed. She scanned him from head to toe, her perfectly arched brows tightening at the sight of his faded shirt and old pair of shoes. To her, his presence felt like an insult to the glamorous image she wanted to project. As she slid into the car, she wrinkled her nose slightly and leaned toward Thabo, whispering just loud enough for the driver to hear. Honestly, Thabo, does he have to be so close? He smells of poverty. The cruel words cut through the air, sharp and cold. Mr. Gamatso's smile faltered for a brief second, but he lowered his gaze, choosing not to respond. Years of wisdom had taught him to hold his tongue, even when people showed cruelty. Thabo, sitting quietly beside Naledi, felt his chest tighten. He heard every word, saw the disdain on her face, and noticed the sadness in the old man's eyes. But instead of defending him right away, Thabo stayed silent, his emotions hidden beneath a calm expression. Deep inside, though, he was torn, angry at Naledi's disrespect, yet unwilling to reveal the truth just yet. Naledi, oblivious to the pain she caused, crossed her arms proudly, as though mocking the driver made her superior. To her, he was nothing more than a shadow, someone unworthy of notice. She didn't realize that her words had not only disrespected a man, but had also revealed something far darker about her own heart. As the car rolled forward, silence filled the space. The city lights of Johannesburg sparkled outside, but inside, an invisible wall had already formed, one that would soon shatter her illusions in ways she could never expect. The following weekend, Naledi invited her closest friends for a night out. She wanted to show them that her relationship with Thabo was moving toward the glamorous life she always talked about. When the car pulled up, with Mr. Komatso behind the wheel, she stepped inside with her friends, laughing loudly, her perfume filling the space. From the start, she made it clear she wasn't pleased with the driver. As the car moved slowly through the busy Johannesburg streets, Naledi rolled her eyes. Why is he driving like an old tortoise? She said loudly, making sure everyone heard. Her friends burst out laughing, feeding her arrogance. She leaned forward and tapped the back of the driver's seat with her shoe. When he didn't respond, she went further, giving the seat a small kick. Hurry up, old man. Some of us don't want to age in this car, she mocked. The girls roared with laughter, clapping their hands as if it was a comedy show. One of them even pulled out her phone, whispering that she should record this for fun. The atmosphere inside the car became a cruel stage, with Naledi as the star performer. But outside, not everyone found it amusing. At a stoplight, a woman crossing the street glanced inside and frowned at the scene. A man waiting at the corner shook his head disapprovingly. They could see what Naledi and her friends could not, that their mockery was cutting deep into the heart of an innocent man. Mr. Gamatso kept his eyes on the road, his hands steady on the steering wheel. His silence spoke louder than any words could. His eyes, however, betrayed the weight of sadness he carried. Each insult pressed against his dignity, but he bore it quietly. with the patience of someone who had seen much of life. Meanwhile, Thabo sat uncomfortably beside Naledi, his jaw tight, his heart heavy. He knew her actions were not only hurting his father, but also exposing the truth of who she really was. As the laughter from her friends faded into casual chatter, Thabo shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His eyes lingered on the rearview mirror, where he caught the faint reflection of Mr. Komatsu's weary face. The silence of the older man weighed heavily on him, pressing against his chest like a stone. Finally, unable to hold it in any longer, Thabo leaned closer to Naledi and spoke softly, his voice firm yet calm. Naledi, please, show some respect. He is still a human being. Naledi turned sharply toward him, her painted lips curling into a smirk. Respect? She scoffed, tossing her hair back with exaggerated confidence. Thabo, you don't get it. People like him are just drivers. They get paid to serve us. Do you really think rich people waste time respecting drivers? Her voice was dripping with arrogance, and her friends nodded, giggling as if her words were gospel truth. Thabo's heart sank. He had hoped she would at least reflect on her behavior, maybe feel a hint of shame. Instead, she doubled down, her pride refusing to bend. Her words stung, not just because they belittled the man he loved dearly, but because they exposed a side of her he could no longer ignore. True wealth, Thabo murmured quietly, more to himself than to her, is shown by how you treat others, not how much you own. But Naledi waved her hand dismissively, rolling her eyes. Please, spare me the lecture. When I marry rich, I'll have a whole team of drivers. And believe me, I won't be calling them sir. She laughed lightly, her shallow confidence filling the space like cheap perfume. The car continued moving forward, but Thabo sat in silence, his thoughts racing. Every word Naledi spoke revealed more about her character, stripping away the polished mask she wore. And in that quiet, uncomfortable ride, Thabo began to wonder if the woman he thought he loved truly had a place in his future. That night, after dropping Naledi at her apartment, Thabo asked the driver to take him home. The ride was quiet, the streetlights flickering through the windows as both men remained lost in thought. When they finally pulled up outside Thabo's house, he didn't immediately get out. Instead, he leaned forward, his voice soft but filled with emotion. Baba, he whispered, I'm sorry for everything she said. You didn't deserve that. Mr. Komatsu turned slightly in his seat, his tired eyes meeting his son's. There was warmth in his gaze, but also a shadow of pain that could not be hidden. He forced a small smile. Don't carry her words on your shoulders, Thabo. I have lived long enough to know the hearts of people. Some carry kindness, and others, only pride. Thabo lowered his head, guilt tightening in his chest. It hurts me to see her treat you like that, Baba. She doesn't know who you are, but even if you were only a driver, no one should be spoken to that way. His voice cracked slightly, the weight of love and respect for his father clear in every word. For a moment, silence filled the car, broken only by the soft hum of the engine. Mr. Komatsu sighed deeply, his rough hands gripping the steering wheel. My son, people reveal their true selves when they believe no one is watching. Tonight, Naledi showed you who she really is. That is more valuable than any gift she could offer you. Thabo nodded slowly, his heart torn between love and disappointment. He reached over and gently touched his father's shoulder. Thank you for your patience, Baba. I promise I'll never let anyone dishonor you again. Mr. Komatsu gave a faint nod, his eyes glistening with quiet sadness. Though he assured his son that he understood, the wound left by Naledi's cruelty was one he carried silently, hidden beneath his calm dignity. Days passed, and Naledi's obsession with wealth only grew stronger. She began dropping hints to Thabo in every conversation, her voice sweet but her intentions sharp. Thabo, she said one evening as they strolled through a mall, don't you think I deserve that necklace? A man who truly loves his woman should show it with gifts. Her eyes sparkled as she pointed at a glittering diamond piece displayed behind the glass. Thabo smiled faintly but said nothing, his silence mistaken by Naledi as hesitation. She continued pressing him, adding little comments here and there. My friends' boyfriends buy them handbags and shoes. Don't you want me to feel proud of you, Thabo? Don't you want people to see how much you love me? Each word was crafted to strike at his pride, to corner him into proving himself with money. Meanwhile, with her friends, Naledi's confidence was unshakable. Sitting at a cafe, sipping on her favorite latte, she leaned in proudly and whispered, just wait. Thabo is going to marry me soon. He's hardworking, and I know he's climbing up in his job. One day I'll be the one showing off the life I deserve. Her friends clapped their hands, teasing her with giggles, already envying the future she painted for herself. In her mind, Thabo was still just an employee trying to rise in the company, but she believed her beauty and charm would push him to spend more, to prove he was worthy of her. To her, love was not about patience or respect. It was about expensive dinners, flashy gifts, and the promise of a glamorous life. Thabo listened quietly, never arguing, never promising more than he could give. Yet inside, he was watching closely. every word shaping his understanding of who Naledi truly was. And with each demand she made, her greed became clearer, pulling her further away from the love she thought she was securing. When Thabo told Naledi that he wanted to take her to a formal dinner to meet someone important, her heart leapt. She was certain this was it, the moment she had been waiting for. To her, important meant family approval or perhaps even an engagement announcement. She spent hours preparing, choosing her most extravagant dress, shimmering jewelry, and the highest heels she owned. Looking into the mirror, she whispered to herself, "Soon, I'll be the woman everyone envies." That evening, when the car arrived, Mr. Komatsu was once again behind the wheel. Naledi's excitement quickly turned into irritation. Again with this driver, she muttered under her breath, but loud enough for him to hear. As she stepped into the car, she fanned herself dramatically. "Thabo, honestly, can't you find someone who knows what cologne is? It's embarrassing to show up with him driving us." Thabo clenched his jaw, his silence hiding the storm building inside him. When they arrived at the elegant restaurant, golden lights glowing through tall glass windows, Mr. Komatsu stepped out first to open the door. Naledi rolled her eyes, brushing past him. In front of the waiting staff, she let her disdain show. "Be careful with the car, old man," she said sharply, as if she were speaking to someone invisible. The staff exchanged uncomfortable glances, some shaking their heads subtly. Inside, Naledi walked proudly beside Thabo, convinced that the grandeur of the restaurant was proof that her dreams were unfolding. She imagined herself being introduced to influential people, pictured the admiration in her friends' eyes when she would tell them about the night. Yet, in her arrogance, she failed to see the disappointed stares from those around her and the quiet sadness in Mr. Komatsu's eyes as he stood outside, once again treated like less than human. She believed she was stepping closer to her dream of wealth and power. In reality, she was walking straight into the truth that would soon shatter her illusions forever. The moment Naledi stepped into the grand dining hall, her eyes sparkled with excitement. Crystal chandeliers glowed above long tables set with silver cutlery and golden plates. Important-looking men and women, dressed in designer suits and gowns, turned their heads as Thabo walked in. To her, it felt like a dream. Surely this was her entry into the life she always wanted. She gripped Thabo's arm tighter, her heart racing with pride. Soon, one of the board members stood and raised his glass. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we celebrate the appointment of our new CEO, Mr. Thabo Komatsu." The room erupted with applause. Naledi froze, her painted smile faltering. She turned to look at Thabo, her jaw slightly open, her mind spinning. CEO? Her ordinary office worker boyfriend was not just an employee. He was now the leader of the entire company. Her heart pounded with both shock and excitement. She imagined the life ahead, mansions, designer clothes, the envy of all her friends. But just as she was preparing to bask in the glow of her new reality, another announcement shook her to the core. A man rose from the corner of the room. It was the driver, Mr. Kagamatsu. Naledi's eyes widened as the board members clapped respectfully. "And tonight," the chairman continued, "we also honor the wisdom and guidance of Thabo's father, Mr. Kagamatsu, who has been his greatest mentor." The air seemed to leave Naledi's lungs. Her legs wobbled as she realized the truth. The man she had mocked, kicked, and belittled in front of others was not a mere driver. He was Thabo's father, the very man who had raised the CEO she dreamed of marrying. Her mind raced back to every insult, every cruel word, every look of disdain she had given him. The room that moments ago had felt like her stage of victory now closed in around her like a trap. Her smile vanished completely, replaced by silent horror. The room grew quiet as Mr. Komatsu slowly stepped forward, his posture calm, his face steady. He did not raise his voice, yet the weight of his presence filled the hall. All eyes turned toward him, waiting. He rested his hands gently on the back of a chair before speaking, his words slow but firm. "Many of you may wonder why I chose to arrive tonight as a driver instead of being announced as Thabo's father. The truth is simple. I wanted to see how this young woman," his eyes shifted briefly toward Naledi, "would treat someone she believed was beneath her." Gasps rippled through the room, and Naledi's cheeks burned red. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her once confident smile gone. Mr. Gamatso's voice, however, remained calm, each word carrying dignity rather than anger. "Respect is not shown to those above you. It is shown to those you believe are below you. That is where true character is revealed." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the board members, the staff, and finally back to Naledi. "I have lived a long life. I have worked hard, struggled, and built everything I own with these hands. And yet, when I stood as a driver, I was insulted, mocked, and treated as less than human. Not by strangers, but by someone who claimed to love my son." The silence in the room grew heavier. The clinking of glasses, the whispers of pride, all of it vanished. His words pierced deeper than any raised voice could. Thabo lowered his eyes, proud of his father's composure but deeply hurt by the truth that had been revealed. Mr. Komatsu straightened, his tone softening. My son deserves a woman who sees his heart, not just his title. Wealth can buy gifts, but it cannot buy respect. And tonight, I believe we all witnessed that truth. The hall remained still, the dignity of his words echoing long after he finished. Naledi sat frozen, her world collapsing in silence. Naledi's hands trembled as she rose from her chair, her eyes darting around the room filled with powerful men and women, all staring at her in silence. The confidence she had carried all evening melted away like wax in a flame. Her throat tightened as she turned toward Thabo, forcing a nervous smile. Thabo, I didn't mean, please, you know I didn't mean it like that, she stammered, her voice cracking under the weight of shame. She reached out, trying to take his hand, but Thabo pulled back gently, his face calm yet firm. His eyes held none of the affection she had always relied on, only a deep disappointment that cut her more than any insult. Naledi, he said softly, his voice steady enough for everyone to hear. Love without respect is worthless. You cannot claim to love me while dishonoring the people I value most. The words struck her harder than any slap. Her lips quivered and she tried again, her voice desperate. I can change, Thabo. Please just give me another chance. But Thabo shook his head slowly, the finality in his gesture leaving no room for hope. I needed to see your true heart, he continued. And tonight, you showed it to me clearly. What you love is not me. It's the life you thought I could give you. Tears spilled down Naledi's cheeks, smudging her carefully applied makeup. The glamorous image she had built for herself crumbled before everyone's eyes. Unable to bear the weight of the stairs, she turned away, her heels clicking across the polished floor. Each step felt heavier than the last as she pushed open the doors and disappeared into the night, her dreams of wealth and status slipping away with her. Inside the hall, silence lingered. Thabo stood tall beside his father, knowing the painful chapter had ended. Naledi's humiliation was complete, but so was the lesson, one written not in anger but in truth. The room remained heavy with silence long after Naledi's footsteps faded into the night. Thabo exhaled slowly, as though releasing a burden he had carried for far too long. He turned to his father, his eyes glistening with gratitude. Baba, he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you. You've shown me something I might never have seen on my own. You reminded me that character matters more than appearances, more than status, more than anything else. Mr. Komatsu placed a steady hand on his son's shoulder, his expression calm yet filled with pride. My boy, he began, his voice low but firm. Wealth and power can open many doors, but they can also blind you if you are not careful. Tonight you saw for yourself. Beauty fades, charm can deceive, but a person's true heart always reveals itself when no one is watching. Thabo nodded slowly, his father's words sinking deep. I thought I loved her, he admitted, but I see now that I was holding on to an image, not the truth. I wanted to believe she would grow, that she would change, but instead, she showed me exactly who she is. His father's eyes softened, the sadness of earlier giving way to gentle wisdom. The right woman, Thabo, will never need you to prove your worth with money or gifts. She will love you for your kindness, your humility, your heart. She will stand beside you whether you are in a mansion or in a small room with nothing but hope. That is the kind of love that lasts. Thabo breathed deeply, his shoulders finally relaxing. He looked at his father with renewed strength. I understand now, Baba. I won't waste my life chasing someone who only loves what I have. I'll wait for someone who loves who I am. Mr. Komatsu smiled warmly, the quiet dignity of a man who had lived his lessons reflected in his eyes. That, my son, is true wealth. Weeks later, the boardroom that once felt intimidating now belonged fully to Thabo. He sat at the head of the long, polished table, not as the ordinary office worker Naledi once believed him to be, but as the respected CEO. His calm leadership style surprised many. Instead of flaunting power, he listened, guided, and made decisions with fairness. Employees who once only knew him as a quiet man now admired him deeply, speaking of his humility and integrity. Beside him, often silently present yet powerful in influence, was Mr. Komatsu. His proud eyes followed his son's every step, knowing the lessons of dignity and respect had taken root. During one company event, as Thabo addressed his staff with warmth and vision, a familiar figure lingered outside the glass doors. Naledi stood at a distance, her once bright eyes dimmed with regret. She was no longer surrounded by friends who admired her arrogance, nor did she carry the same confidence she once wore like armor. Instead, she looked fragile, her expensive clothes unable to hide the emptiness inside. She watched as Thabo moved with grace, shaking hands, listening attentively, and smiling with sincerity. It struck her deeply. He was everything she had ever wanted in a man, but for reasons she never understood. Not for his money, not for his title, but for the heart she had overlooked. As the evening light sparkled through the tall windows, Naledi's eyes welled with tears. She realized too late that arrogance had cost her everything. Thabo had moved forward, stronger than ever, surrounded by respect and genuine admiration, while she stood alone, haunted by the memory of her own pride. The truth was undeniable. Wealth and beauty may fade, but character lasts forever. And as the scene closed, the message lingered like a final echo, because the way you treat those you look down on reveals who you truly are.